The swordsmanship that felt somewhat unfamiliar yesterday, today already shows the charm of a swordsman. The posture is precise, the movements are swift and decisive, there's a sense of agility. Sword Dao prodigy. At this moment, these 4 words were the only thing that surfaced in Xianxia's mind. You know, how many days has Bian Rushu been learning this set of swordsmanship? It would already be good if she could get a grasp of it in half a month. But now, she has already become proficient, and there's a rare spirituality in her moves, and that's the key. Although he scolded the young girl harshly yesterday, it was only because he saw the child's talent in Sword Dao and the hope that she could become a strong swordsman in the future, which made him strict and demanding. He didn't expect that Bian Rushu's performance today would far exceed his expectations. She's definitely a Sword Dao genius, a rare kind. Good, very good. Xianxia smiled, nodded repeatedly, and when Bian Rushu finished practicing, he asked, "Did you practice by yourself last night?" Instantly, Bian Rushu thought of Brother Hao's guidance, but then she remembered his stern advice and warnings. Hence, she gently nodded. Xianxia was not surprised. If she hadn't put in the effort last night, she wouldn't have been able to perform like this today. This swordsmanship is a bit too simple for you. Today I'll teach you a higher level swordsmanship, Xianxia said. The previous one was only a low-level swordsmanship. He had no right to enter the Li family's listening rain tower, and he wasn't qualified to teach the higher-level swordsmanship, let alone the supreme-level swordsmanship listed there, to the young girl before him. Unless it was by the instruction of Li Hao's parents, even the current Li Hao wasn't qualified. He was still too young to lead the family. Bian Rushu nodded. An adult and a child, they began practicing a new swordsmanship in the courtyard again. One teaching, the other learning. Li Hao looked on for a moment, feeling a bit bored, then continued to ponder his own chess strategy. With black and white pieces in his hands, he flipped them between his fingers, gently rubbing them, while his mind was occupied with thinking about the chess manuals. Time passed unnoticed in this courtyard. During the day, Li Hao stared blankly at the chessboard by himself. In the evenings, he occasionally offered guidance to Bian Rushu, correcting some of her minor mistakes. Bian Rushu's rapid progress in Sword Dao elated Xianxia. Months later, within Piaoxu courtyard, Li Hao stood silently in the crowd, watching an elderly man with an immortal demeanor take the 8-year-old Li Wushuang away for cultivation. Fifth Lady tearfully said her goodbyes, reminding Shuanger to eat well, behave well, and sleep well. Li Hao remembered. When he was still in swaddling clothes, this young girl clung to his mother's pants, sizing him up with her shinning bright eyes. Fifth Lady had 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy. This was her eldest daughter. At the age of 5, during the bone evaluation, she showed a 9th grade battle physique, and the Li family hailed another prodigy. Now, having exhibited extremely high talent in cultivation, she's been noticed by an expert who has taken her on as a disciple. This scenario, so familiar to Li Hao, he had witnessed it 2 years ago as well. That time, it was Liu Yuerong's child, led away by a bald monk reciting Buddhist scriptures. Clearly, that person was from Mount Wuliang. In the Li family, those with exceptional talent usually enter Daiyu's top forces for cultivation, which is also one way for top forces to extend their connections. As for those with lesser talent, like the second lady's second son, who only had a 7th grade battle physique, though he was also considered a genius, was clearly a cut below those prodigies and would study at Qingzhou City's Tan Palace Academy. Compared to 5th Lady's maternal feelings, Li Wushuang's young face showed maturity, like a little adult, calmly nodding, reminding her mother to take care of her health, and her father as well. Subsequently, the young girl's gaze swept over the courtyard, looking at everyone in turn. As she passed Li Hao, she gave him a brief glance, already having little impression of him. Amongst the 3rd generation in the family, those whom her mother frequently mentioned to her were only a few with exceptional talent. For example, the second lady's child, Li Qianfeng, was the target she was chasing. The others, she barely took notice of. Immersed in the world of martial arts, the words of her mother, the martial instructors, and the servants had influenced her from a young age. Despite her youth, her mind had matured, and she had a sharpness in her eyes, with aspirations and goals to pursue the pinnacle of martial arts. Saying farewell to her parents, accompanied by the well wishes of the crowd, the young girl left with the Taoist. When they would meet again, It would probably be years later when she returned to the family with a famed reputation. Life settled back into calm. In these peaceful days, Li Hao slowly returned to playing chess by himself. But now, he wasn't playing for experience, but rather to purely contemplate each game. He was trying to overcome himself. When playing white, he would switch his thinking to white, and when playing black, he would switch to black. Although the process was a bit difficult, it felt like a challenge. Enjoyment was found in the struggle against oneself. In this world where entertainment was scarce, Li Hao gradually grew fond of this kind of focus on something, especially when it also offered the fun of a challenge. Therefore, the maids would occasionally be startled by the young master's sudden outburst. For example, while quietly eating, he would suddenly shout out, "Ah, that move should have been placed there," with a look of regret. Sometimes he would point to a flower bed and ask the maids beside him, "Do you see those flowers? Don't they resemble a chessboard?" The maids, they didn't understand, not at all. But if the young master said so, then it must be so. After all, he was the young master of the house. So what else could they do but agree? By the time Li Hao was 6, Lin Haixia found him and said he wanted to teach him techniques. He moved a weapon rack over and let Li Hao choose and practice with each weapon, just like he had done for Bian Rushou before. However, considering that Li Hao's physique wasn't as top-notch as Bian Rushou's, he decided to delay it for a year to avoid practicing too early and negatively affecting bone development. Only then did Li Hao realize that this strong figure from the military was lingering in the mansion just to teach him techniques. "I thought I couldn't cultivate?" Li Hao dragged out of bed early in the morning. Yawning, just wanted to crawl back into bed. First, practice the techniques. What kind of response was that? Being idle is surely better than being overworked? But Lin Haixia had clearly made up his mind, and no matter how much Li Hao argued, it was futile. Finally, with a stern face, Lin Haixia took out a bamboo stick and threatened to hit him if he didn't obey. Li Hao wasn't afraid of pain, after all. Given his current physical strength, unless Lin Haixia really hit hard, it was nothing more than tickling. But seeing the other party taking it so seriously, he decided to avoid the confrontation for the time being. Li Hao picked up the weapons and practiced with each, just going through the motions, handling the saber, spear, staff, and stick without any real form. When he got to the sword, the little girl was waiting with eager anticipation, clenching her little fist and encouraging, "Brother Hao, go for it." What kind of response was that? Being idle is surely better than being overworked. But Lin Haixia had clearly made up his mind, and no matter how much Li Hao argued, it was futile. Finally, with a stern face, Lin Haixia took out a bamboo stick and threatened to hit him if he didn't obey. Li Hao wasn't afraid of pain, after all, given his current physical strength. Unless Lin Haixia really hit hard, it was nothing more than tickling. But seeing the other party taking it so seriously, he decided to avoid the confrontation for the time being. Li Hao picked up the weapons and practiced with each, just going through the motions, handling the saber, spear, staff, and stick without any real form. When he got to the sword, the little girl was waiting with eager anticipation, clenching her little fist and encouraging, "Brother Hao, go for it!" And Li Hao was speechless, casually swinging the sword a few times and finishing hurriedly. Lin Haixia's face darkened, seemingly seeing through the little guy's thoughts, and said, "None of these weapons pleased me today with your practice. You're not allowed to rest, and you're not allowed to touch that damn chessboard again." "Lin," Li Hao wailed. "Practice!" Lin Haixia gritted his teeth, ignoring Li Hao's pleas. Li Hao picked up a saber and started to play with it, but his mind wasn't on cultivation. Although he appeared serious, there was no method to his movement. Seeing Li Hao take an interest in the saber, Lin Haixia began to teach him move by move, starting with the simplest stances. Seeing how serious he was, Li Hao dared not practice at all. If Lin Haixia saw any promise or hope, he would be inspired daily, and there'd be no peace for Li Hao. So, as Lin Haixia taught, Li Hao kept nodding, claiming he understood. As soon as the saber was in hand, it was all over the place again. It was as if his hands and feet were saying, "Understand my foot." An afternoon passed, and Lin Haixia felt like cursing too. He couldn't even get the most basic saber technique right. Did this boy lack any martial arts insight at all? Seeing Li Hao take an interest in the saber, Lin Haixia began to teach him move by move, starting with the simplest stances. Seeing how serious he was, Li Hao dared not practice at all. If Lin Haixia saw any promise or hope, he would be inspired daily, and there'd be no peace for Li Hao. So, as Lin Haixia taught, Li Hao kept nodding, claiming he understood. As soon as the saber was in hand, it was all over the place again. It was as if his hands and feet were saying, "Understand my foot!" An afternoon passed, and Lin Haixia felt like cursing too. He couldn't even get the most basic saber technique right. Did this boy lack any martial arts insight at all? He hated his own incompetence, his inability to repay the commander's kindness. After forcing Li Hao to practice for half a month, Lin Haixia finally despaired and gave up. He told Li Hao that recent changes in the war in northern Yan meant he would have to leave soon. Li Hao looked at the man and knew he had given up hope. During this time, seeing the man's grief, Li Hao felt both touched and ashamed. The other party hated the chessboard, hated their own inability to teach, but never once hated Li Hao. Lin, do you think a person who can't cultivate martial arts, if they go down the path of body refinement and combine it with techniques, can become an expert? Sitting in the courtyard, Li Hao looked at the man drinking beside him and asked. Lin Haixia put the wine aside, thought for a moment, and said with utmost certainty, "Yes!" He then continued, "I have seen experts in the military with tremendous physical strength. Their spear techniques were virtually perfect. They could be considered among the strong." He turned his head to look at Li Hao, yet his gaze quickly dimmed. "Young master, I know you are intelligent and can endure hardship. If you go down the path of body refinement, you will surely manage, but your comprehension..." He didn't finish, feeling a deep sense of sorrow. The reason he had let Li Hao practice techniques was with this in mind. Li Hao looked at him with surprise and said, "I sleep till the sun is up high every day. Do you think I can endure hardships?" Lin Haixia shook his head slightly, a bitter smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. "I have seen how you play chess. I know you can endure hardships. It's just that you don't like to." From Li Hao, he saw the potential to become a top expert. That was intelligence, mindset, diligence. But the only things missing were the innate talent for martial arts and comprehension of martial art. These two were precisely the tickets to the world of martial arts. Without entering the gate, how could one talk about a superior seat? This also resulted in the abundant cultivation resources in Divine General Mansion being piled up in front of Li Hao, but amounting to nothing more than an empty mountain. Hearing Lin Haixia's words, Li Hao felt a bit astonished, turned his head and glanced at the man, then fell into silence again. As the night wind swept through, one continued to drink while the other silently watched the night sky, as if a shooting star streaked across whose falling star was that? 2 months later, Lin Haixia was leaving, saying his formal goodbyes to Li Hao. Li Hao waited for him in the inner courtyard, the vast yard empty. He had the servants of the inner courtyard withdraw to the outer courtyard, leaving only him to see Lin off. "Do you find it too quiet, Uncle Lin?" Li Hao, with hands clasped behind his back, asked with a smile. Lin Haixia sighed lightly and said, "I don't care for these superficial things. As for you, take good care of Jouer. That girl has an extremely high talent for swordplay. She will surely achieve great accomplishments in the future. Treat her well, and she will protect you one day." At this moment, his eyes held a mix of complexity, size, and acceptance. He had completely given up on the idea of Li Hao learning martial arts. He had come to Divine General Mansion full of expectations and passion, hoping to use all his heart to properly mentor the young son of the commander, to repay a debt of gratitude. Now, he was leaving full of regrets and feeling desolate, a bit sad in his heart. Li Hao smiled faintly and said, "Uncle Lin, I don't have much to give you upon our meeting, but since you are leaving today, let me give you a small gift." "I don't need any gift, nor do I have the face to accept one. You just need to be well," said Lin Haixia, feeling somewhat comforted but uninterested in the gift mentioned by Li Hao, for he lacked nothing. Li Hao didn't speak, simply walking slowly towards the weapon rack. Lin Haixia was taken aback, watching him with confusion. Then he saw Li Hao slowly draw a sword from the rack. "This sword is for you, Uncle Lin. I am grateful for your guidance," Li Hao said softly. Then the sword moved. His posture was graceful like snowflakes, and the sword in his hand shone like the surging waves of an endless sea, instantly casting myriad intricate and beautiful sword blossoms, luxurious to the extreme. The ultimate, endless sea, tidal sword, skill! At that moment, the brilliant and dazzling sword light illuminated the entire empty inner courtyard, and it also shone in Lin Haixia's eyes, lighting up the dark and contracted pupils into a bright, snowy white. Xianxia finally left. However, unlike the regret and desolation he felt earlier, he left the Divine General Mansion nearly running, filled with an excitement that made his heart leap. He wanted to report the incredibly happy news to the commander at the border as quickly as possible. If they knew their child possessed a swordsmanship talent that arose once in 1,000 years, they would surely be immensely surprised and comforted. That one sword, Xianxia understood, yet did not fully understand. He recognized that sword technique, the most famous in the Li family's collection, the Endless Sea Tide Sword skill. But compared to those versions of the Tide Sword skill he had seen, even those at the perfect level, this one was not inferior and even had a special feeling. After searching his mind, he could only think of 2 words: complete. Even more flawless than perfect. Xianxia knew that beyond technical perfection, there was another deeper realm called perfection. But even for those immersed in a technique for decades, it was very hard to reach. Besides hard training, one also needed an extreme talent. Yet this world-shocking sword had now been displayed by Li Hao, a 6-year-old child. Even for those dazzling prodigies, to practice a technique to proficiency by the age of 6 was already extremely difficult. Moreover, Xianxia had never seen Li Hao practice swordsmanship, but without doubt, he felt Li Hao had been secretly practicing. However, whether poor or rich, every day only had 12 hours. In front of time, everyone is equal, and whenever he saw Li Hao, most of his day consisted of playing chess, playing around, wandering, daydreaming, eating, and drinking. He had never seen him practice swordsmanship, not even touch it. Even if he was secretly working hard, how much time could he possibly squeeze out? He asked Li Hao, "Why do you secretly practice swordsmanship? And why conceal this astonishing talent?" But Li Hao just smiled and shook his head without speaking. Xianxia thought of much, including those imperial family feuds and intrigues of noble families he had heard about, and he vaguely guessed something. Looking at Li Hao's quietly smiling face, Xianxia felt a twinge in his nose. He understood that if the man from the border returned, this child would not be without support. He could shine brilliantly, yet now he must hide and keep a low profile. If this child had not seen his sincerity, he probably would not have let him see this hidden true face. Thinking of this, Xianxia felt quite touched and consoled. This one sword had not only revealed Li Hao's talent in swordsmanship to Xianxia, but combining it with Li Hao's usual manner of speaking had also made him truly understand how smart this child really was. Xianxia left in a hurry, so much so that when he passed the front courtyard, he didn't even greet Bian Rushu. With Xianxia's departure, the courtyard returned to its usual tranquility. But now, being 6 years old, Li Hao needed to get up early every day to go to Eternal Spring Court to pay his respects to his aunt, which was a matter of etiquette. The purpose of this etiquette was to cultivate from an early age respect for teachers and the resolve to repay kindness. Bian Rushu, as Li Hao's fiancée since childhood, almost considered a member of the Li family, naturally had to accompany him in paying these respects. During these morning visits, it was inevitable to run into other children from various courtyards, though there were only 4 or 5 of them. All were around Li Hao's age. For instance, the second son and youngest daughter of 5th Lady, the orphan son of 6th Lady, the son and daughter of 8th Lady. The other children, either like Li Qianfeng and Li Wushuang with exceptional talent taken away by famous teachers, or older, enlisting in the military to strive for a career in the army. Like the son and daughter of the aunt, both in their 20s, serving as junior generals in the army, who would occasionally return if there was no warfare. But as members of the Li family, they had military discipline ingrained in their bones, strictly following it. Thus, the aunt barely saw her children throughout the year. After the morning respects, Li Hao and Bian Rushu were invited by the aunt, He Jianlen, to enjoy the nutritious breakfast she had prepared. After chatting casually with the dignified and graceful aunt for a while, the 2 small figures, one after the other, wobbled back to their own courtyard. Li Hao resumed his usual routine of daydreaming about chess. Bian Rushu practiced her swordsmanship in the courtyard. The high-quality sword technique Xianxia had taught her before leaving was enough for her to practice for several years. One would have thought this peaceful and harmonious time would just slowly continue to pass, until several days later, a sudden message drastically returned to the Divine General Mansion. Xianxia had come back. A warrior enveloped in heavy armor, with a robust body and a cold gaze, had brought Xianxia back, but only brought back one hand. When Li Hao heard the news from Zhao, he was stunned. The chess piece in his hand fell to the ground, but normally his eyes were only for chess pieces. Yet now, he didn't even glance at it. He didn't bother to put his boots on, and barefooted, he dashed out and rushed into the Eternal Spring Court. The maid at the door meant to report his arrival, but Li Hao had already dashed inside. Then, he saw within the main hall of the Eternal Spring Court, where he usually paid his respects in the morning, a soldier kneeling on one knee. Li Hao's heart trembled, and looking past this soldier, he saw a piece of red cloth on the ground in front of him, upon which lay a hand. At the point of severance, it looked torn, the flesh mangled and uneven. Wrapped in a blue sleeve, this was the clothing Lin Haixia wore when he left. This hand had, just a few days ago, tousled the little girl's hair. In his ear, this soldier was reporting to He Jianlin. Lin was ambushed by demons lurking on the road to northern Yan while passing through the national highway of Qi State. The stalemate on the northern Yan battlefield led to demons infiltrating various cities of northern Yan, attempting to disperse our army's forces, with other states also experiencing frequent demon attacks. Stop for a moment. He Jianlan interrupted the soldier. She was slightly distracted, watching Li Hao, who rushed into the hall barefoot and in haste. Then, thinking of something, a sigh appeared in her eyes as she instructed Shui Jian beside her. Take the arm away for now. Yes. Shui Jian nodded gently and then looked up at Li Hao, who had rushed in. This hand had, just a few days ago, tousled the little girl's hair. In his ear, this soldier was reporting to He Jianlan. Lin was ambushed by demons lurking on the road to northern Yan while passing through the national highway of Qi State. The stalemate on the northern Yan battlefield led to demons infiltrating various cities of northern Yan, attempting to disperse our army's forces, with other states also experiencing frequent demon attacks. Stop for a moment. He, Jianlan, interrupted the soldier. She was slightly distracted, watching Li Hao, who rushed into the hall barefoot and in haste. Then, thinking of something, a sigh appeared in her eyes as she instructed Shui Jian beside her. Take the arm away for now. Yes. Shui Jian nodded gently and then looked up at Li Hao, who had rushed in. Consumed! Li Hao's mind roared like thunder. His eyes suddenly reddened. His blood seemed to flow backward, rushing to his head. He could scarcely imagine the scene. How cruel it must have been. Having come to this world and resided in the Divine General Mansion, though he had heard quite a bit about demons from his surroundings, he had never truly seen one. Although he knew the battlefields were brutal, this was the first time he was facing this harsh reality so directly. Does that demon have a name? Li Hao asked in a low voice. The soldier replied, yes, that demon resides outside the city of Qi State and has self-proclaimed the title Tiger Robe Immortal. Li Hao silently engraved this name into his memory, a surge of indescribable killing intent welling up in his heart, but he controlled his emotions and asked no further, merely turning around, picking up the red cloth from the ground and covering the arm properly. Then Li Hao looked up at the family head. Fifth Lady, I have taken Uncle Lin's hand back. Excuse my rudeness today. Please don't be upset. Having spoken, he then turned around, holding the arm, and left barefoot. He, Jianlan's eyes flickered slightly. From Li Hao's actions, she sensed something unusual, seldom seen in the boy, an indication that he was more mature and astute than she had thought. Shui Jian, bring Cheng Ji's boots for Hao, He Jianlan instructed. Shui Jian nodded, went to the side room to find the boots, and just as she was rushing out of the courtyard, she saw that the small figure had already gone far, disappearing from view. Back at Mountain and River Courtyard, Li Hao found a spot and buried the arm. Then he fetched a wooden plaque, carved Lin Haixia on it, and placed it into the soil. He instructed Zhao, cordon off this area, no one is to step here. When Zhao learned that what was buried was Lin Haixia's remaining arm, he quickly advised, young master, this is the family head's courtyard. We shouldn't bury remains here. We have a hero's cemetery for burial of war heroes. Let's take Colonel Lin there. Let's prepare a ceremonial grave there for Uncle Lin. Li Hao shook his head slightly, surveying the courtyard. This vast mountain and river courtyard can accommodate Uncle Lin's hand. Young master. As Zhao was about to continue, Li Hao stopped him, leaving him no choice but to give up. Make sure to provide for Uncle Lin's family well, Li Hao said to Zhao. Zhao replied, as a military man, the northern Yan side should already be aware and will handle his family's situation properly. That is there. This is here. Li Hao glanced at Zhao. You should understand what I mean. Zhao paused, then nodded slightly. I understand. The death of Xianxia, much like a small stone thrown into the bottom of a lake, caused little more than a ripple within the Divine General Mansion. Life continued as usual in the other courtyards, but within Mountain and River Courtyard, Li Hao became even more engrossed in chess, even neglecting Bian Ruche's sword practice. He didn't tell the little girl about Uncle Lin to spare her the sorrow. Time flew by. One day, Li Hao awoke from his sleep, wherein he had been playing chess with Uncle Lin. Suddenly, a fierce tiger rushed in from outside the chessboard, knocking it over and pinning Xianxia to the ground by his neck. He sat up in bed, gasping for air. The little girl by his side woke up disturbed, her eyes sleepy as she rubbed her eyes and asked, Brother Hao, what's wrong? Li Hao came to his senses and shook his head. It's nothing. As the little girl fell asleep again, Li Hao covered her with the blanket that had slipped aside, then sat up and went to the window. Under the moonlight, words suddenly appeared before Li Hao's eyes. You have comprehended the spirit of chess. Seeing the prompt, Li Hao's heart did not overflow with too much joy. He had long cast aside utilitarian desires, focusing wholeheartedly on the game, and it was precisely because of this that he possessed a chess Tao state of mind. To use chess Tao as a tool for practicing martial arts, a concept he once held, was now something he could not accept. Even so, a part of him felt an impulse to directly invest these skill points into chess Tao. However, that severed arm, the man who drank wine, made him restrain such thoughts. Playing chess was indeed important, the thing he loved doing now, but there were some things he had to do, such as tearing the tiger robe immortal into thousands of pieces. Nevertheless, that was a great demon of the fourth realm, and getting to the fourth realm was not something that could be achieved overnight. The only thing he could do now was to grow up quickly. Chess Tao state of mind was a state of mind, a condition. After obtaining the chess Tao state of mind, Li Hao spent the following days in his small courtyard busily immersed in chess. But now, he was not merely chasing the bit of experience one gets at the end of a game. He was truly enjoying every bit of the chess playing process. The ingenuity of every move, the layout, the contemplation, all deeply fascinated him, like playing a fun game, totally absorbed, with no desire to stop. Whether eating, sleeping, or watching the little girl train in swordsmanship, his mind was filled with thoughts of chess. This made Li Hao lose interest in almost everything other than chess. One day, Shuijian from Eternal Spring Court brought news that the matriarch had invited Bian Rushou to join the training facility of Divine General Mansion. It was the place where the descendants of the Li family cultivated. The descendants were like stars holding the moon in the training facility, their status much higher than the others. Similarly, for foundation, establishment, and blood-melting cultivation resources, they were at least a level above the others. Therefore, the disparity in martial arts talent between direct descendants and the others was significant. This resulted in, apart from a few just sensible direct-line youngsters, most of the other relatives being teenagers in their mid-teens, with talents ranging around 4 to 6 ranks, considered average, but capable of holding down a territory in the future. Those relatives with talent reaching the 7th rank would be given focused cultivation, enjoying resources close to those of direct descendants. After entering the training facility, Bian Rushou officially stepped onto the path of cultivation. That's when the terror of her 9-ranked battle body became evident. In just a few months, Li Hao saw the little girl advancing to the 4th level of the Power Passage realm. The descendants were like stars holding the moon in the training facility, their status much higher than the others. Similarly, for foundation, establishment, and blood-melting cultivation resources, they were at least a level above the others. Therefore, the disparity in martial arts talent between direct descendants and the others was significant. This resulted in, apart from a few just sensible direct-line youngsters, most of the other relatives being teenagers in their mid-teens, with talents ranging around 4 to 6 ranks, considered average, but capable of holding down a territory in the future. Those relatives with talent reaching the 7th rank would be given focused cultivation, enjoying resources close to those of direct descendants. After entering the training facility, Bian Rushou officially stepped onto the path of cultivation. That's when the terror of her 9-ranked battle body became evident. In just a few months, Li Hao saw the little girl advancing to the 4th level of the Power Passage realm. Some of the kids were tactless in speech, and it was unavoidable to provoke conflicts that might reach the adults, which would not look good. As the matriarch of Divine General Mansion, she sought peace and quiet, and Li Hao was content with this arrangement, enjoying the leisure. After all, for him, practicing martial arts was a waste of time. He had no interest in squabbling with those teenagers. Too dull. After playing so many games, haven't you learned anything? It's the same move that lost you 3 games already, Li Hao scolded the house servant playing chess in front of him. Some of the kids were tactless in speech, and it was unavoidable to provoke conflicts that might reach the adults, which would not look good. As the matriarch of Divine General Mansion, she sought peace and quiet, and Li Hao was content with this arrangement, enjoying the leisure. After all, for him, practicing martial arts was a waste of time. He had no interest in squabbling with those teenagers. Too dull. After playing so many games, haven't you learned anything? It's the same move that lost you 3 games already, Li Hao scolded the house servant playing chess in front of him. If the game was played poorly, the young master would get upset, causing the servant much distress. The 2 of you play terribly. You've been my opponents for so long and haven't improved a bit, Li Hao said, irritated. The servant hastily pleaded for forgiveness, while the other, as if remembering something, stealthily glanced at Li Hao and said, "Young master, I do know someone who plays chess. He's a 3rd-ranked house servant newly joined here." "Oh?" Li Hao raised an eyebrow and asked, "Where is he?" "In the woodshed, handling the chopping of firewood. If the game was played poorly, the young master would get upset, causing the servant much distress." "The 2 of you play terribly. You've been my opponents for so long and haven't improved a bit," Li Hao said, irritated. The servant hastily pleaded for forgiveness, while the other, as if remembering something, stealthily glanced at Li Hao and said, "Young master, I do know someone who plays chess. He's a 3rd-ranked house servant newly joined here." "Oh?" Li Hao raised an eyebrow and asked, "Where is he?" "In the woodshed, handling the chopping of firewood." "Then what are we waiting for? Call him over so I can test him," Li Hao instantly said. "All right, young master," the house servant said joyfully, immediately taking his leave. Before long, a lean and skinny young man, dressed in servant's clothes, was brought before Li Hao. "What are you staring at? Haven't you seen the young master?" "Ah, yes, may the young master have peace." The lean young man hurriedly knelt down. Li Hao waved his hand slightly for the young man to rise and speak, pointing at the chessboard. "I hear you play chess. Play a game with me and let's see how well you do. If you're good, from now on, you'll stay at Mountain River Courtyard as a top-ranked house servant by my side." "Ah?" The lean young man clearly hadn't expected such a stroke of good fortune to fall upon him and was dumbstruck, then immediately exclaimed with joy, "Thank you, young master, thank you." After saying this, he wiped his hands on his clothes and sat down in front of the chessboard. Soon a game was laid out, and Li Hao took the white pieces in hand. Several moves into the game, Li Hao was already delighted. This skinny young man really could play chess, and he had quite some technique. Li Hao started to take it seriously too, making his moves without mercy. In just a short while, the young man's face turned pale, his forehead was beading with sweat, and fear could be seen in his eyes. In the end, his hand trembling slightly, he slumped low, staring at the chessboard in front of him, then at Li Hao, unable to believe it. Such a young child, so deeply versed in the ways of Chess Town. "I lost," said the lean young man with a complex expression as he stood up, his eyes betraying reluctance and a hint of subtle ferocity. Li Hao was in a daze. He came to his senses when he heard the young man's words and immediately started laughing. "Good, very good. From now on, you're a top-ranked servant in my courtyard. Just accompany me in chess every day." The lean young man was stunned, looking at Li Hao in amazement. But I lost!" Li Hao smiled. As soon as the game ended, it had prompted him that he gained experience, a whole 20 points. Normally, when playing chess with the 2 knuckleheads by his side, the most he'd get was 3 points. The difference was simply huge. This also showed that the more skilled the player in a chess match, the more experience he would get, rather than just rushing through game after game purely by volume. If every game yields 20 points, 10 games will be 200. To accumulate 5,000 points, only 250 games would be needed, and even if calculated at 10 games a day, it would only take a month. The more Li Hao thought about it, the more excited he became, his eyes looking more and more pleased at the lean young man before him. "If you can beat me, I can grant you 10,000 taels of gold," Li Hao said, encouraging him with a smile. The lean young man was shocked, his body trembling with excitement. Li Hao told him not to stand there in a daze and to sit and continue playing while instructing the two servants by his side to go prepare his registration and handle the transfer procedures. And so, Li Hao and the lean young man began a series of matches in the courtyard. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. One night, after dinner, Li Hao called the lean young man over for another battle. In the bedroom, under the nightlight, two figures, one large and one small, were locked in a chess battle on a board. "Young master." As Li Hao concentrated on plotting his next move, he suddenly heard the lean young man call out to him. But the tone was not the usual one that was slightly flattering and respectful. Instead, there was a strange tranquility to it. Li Hao looked up in confusion to see a glint of cold light shooting towards him straight at his face. His pupils shrank, and his body instinctively kicked back, retreating like lightning. Looking back at the chess table, the lean young man's one hand was lying on the board while the other maintained a stabbing gesture with a dagger, his face showing a hint of shock, obviously. He had not expected that his attack would be dodged by the young master. You... Li Hao came back to his senses. Everything had happened too suddenly and without warning. As he was shocked, his eyes swiftly turned icy cold, and he said in a chilling voice, "An assassination? Who sent you?" A woman from Shuiwa courtyard flashed through his mind, but Li Hao promptly dismissed that thought. After all, he was a cripple without any threat, and it seemed unlikely someone from inside would want to assassinate him. "How did you..." The lean young man's mind was in even greater disarray than Li Hao's, more shocked. Wasn't this child a useless person who couldn't cultivate martial arts? For all those days in the yard, accompanying Li Hao daily, he indeed had not seen him practice at all, not even once. To know, children of the Li family were expected to suffer through rough training at the age of 6. Yet, this disabled child spent every day playing chess in his own courtyard, ignored by everyone. The intelligence was not wrong, but it seemed outrageously so. Quickly, the lean young man reacted. His body exploded in movement, displaying a shockingly swift movement technique, lunging directly at Li Hao. He must not let the child cry out. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness and murderous intent. But on the other side, Li Hao's thoughts mirrored his. The assassin must not be allowed to cry out, or else too many would be alarmed. Kill. Seeing the onrushing figure, Li Hao did not dodge. Instead, he suddenly thrust out with his foot. His small frame burst forth like thunder, carrying a faint whistling sound in the action. As he got close, he tilted his head slightly to watch the dagger swipe past his eyes. At the same time, he delivered a punch to the enemy's belly. Li Hao had never engaged in physical combat with anyone since he had started his path of cultivation. This time, it was almost full power unleashed. A sound as heavy as a sandbag hitting the floor echoed. The lean young man's eyeballs nearly popped out as he was struck, curving like a shrimp and forced to fly backward, crashing in front of the chess table. Li Hao didn't know how much force was behind his own punch. But given he could lift up a 2-ton rockery, this forceful punch must have carried tens of thousands of pounds. As the young man was repelled, Li Hao quickly leaped forward. His small hand, like a hawk's claw, grabbed the other's throat and he said coldly, "Don't make a sound!" The lean young man? What's happening? The lean young man's mind was momentarily muddled, unable to discern who the assassin was. But feeling the tremendous force pressing against his throat, he came to his senses and looked at the little boy before him in alarm and fear. What kind of monster is this? Barely 7 years old, yet possessing such terrifying strength. Even at the 10th level of perfection in the power passage realm, plus the resurgence of the noble lord's divine blood, it shouldn't be so exaggerated, should it? Who sent you to assassinate me? Li Hao stared intently at the other party and asked, while various pieces of information surfaced in his mind. Playing chess was a means to approach him, indicating that the other party's purpose in coming to the Divine General Mansion was straightforward to assassinate him. The lean young man was somewhat silent, as the child before him displayed a strength and cognition far beyond that of an ordinary 6-year-old. He had thought he was sent to deal with a useless little thing, only to uncover such terrifying information. You're not a martial arts waste. Hiding your strength, is this your idea or your old man's arrangement? The lean young man asked, slightly squinting his eyes. Now that the assassination attempt had failed and he felt the enormous strength at his throat that could crush it at any moment, he knew he had no way out and became calm. Assassinating the direct bloodline of the Divine General Mansion was a task with very slim chances of survival. It's just a pity that the mission could not be completed. Do you know my father? Li Hao's eyes flickered slightly. You're joking. The lean young man said coldly, who in the world does not know the Martial Marquis Xingwu? Currently, he is stationed at the Frontier Pass, and a few months ago, he gathered martial artists from Jianghu in northern Yan to assist in suppressing demons, commanding great respect with a single call. Assisting in suppressing demons? Li Hao furrowed his brows. Could it be that the situation in northern Yan had become so difficult that they had to rely on the strength of Jianghu martial artists? Are you sent by my stepmother? Li Hao